Ooh, that was a bit of a rush. Welcome back to the podcast, episode 47 of the Look Mum I'm Hustling podcast. Just had a sneeze attack prior to recording.
I know, it's a perfect opportune moment just to make us laugh and start off the podcast right.
It said have a look at the light and it worked, but it also made me made my loin region like shrink up a little bit. Just recovering from that. But welcome to the show. Welcome back. Having a fun morning so far. A few hurdles thrown our way, but we're going to persevere. I said I wasn't going to talk about it, but immediately I brought it up.
But it's fine. Like, it's not every day we do we do our podcast at like the same time every day, but it's not every day that you get a flat tire and then have to like rush around and do everything. But we do have some pretty interesting topics to talk about.
We have some interesting topics. Thank you for getting the pod back on track. So Millennials living at home, a lot more Millennials and actually Zillennials.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you or the listeners know what a Zillennial is. We'll get into that. Moving back home at a surprisingly high rate post-COVID. And the question is, are they doing it to save money? Obviously, are probably saving money, probably paying less to their parents for board than they would renting their own house or paying mortgage. Mm-hmm. But that means they have expendable income and higher purchasing power. So a lot of brands are sort of capitalizing on that and tailoring their goods and services to that market because they know they have a lot more money to play with. So that's kind of interesting. Louis Vuitton and Yayoi Kusama, hopefully I got pronounced that right. I tried 3 to 4 times before we started the episode to say that right. So Louis Vuitton collaborate with artist Yayoi Kusama to design massive collection, creating viral moments all over the world. But is that a good thing? Is the collab a good thing? You've done research on this one, so I have no idea what we're talking about. So I'm interested to hear. I know what Louis Vuitton is, but I don't know who the artist is. So
no, yeah, it was like as I was trying to find some interesting things to talk about, like 4 or 5 articles came up with this, and I just started to look into it, and I was like, because some of the art looked familiar, so I sort of have a general idea who she is. But yeah, it's just really interesting because this is the second collab around, and they're putting a lot of emphasis on it, which is not something that all these designer brands usually do.
Right, so they're marketing it more and trying to push it to the public.
100%.
So it's high-end fashion.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Interesting. These are fashion brand collabs are always interesting because the artists generally you haven't heard of. Like there's new ones announced every other week. This is just one of them, obviously. But there's so many that artists you just had never heard of unless you're really into the art world and the sort of the luxury world as it would be. And we'll get into that a bit later. Speaking of marketing, Times Square marketing has a new there's a new way to market your stuff in Times Square. So everyone knows Times Square. The hub of New York City.
100%, yeah, with the big billboards. So much like, I guess, visual noise that happens in that particular area. Yep. Yeah, it was the 15 seconds you can get your name out there or your face out there.
A lot of those buildings are plastered with gigantic LCD screens. They actually can wrap around the building and stuff. They're not just like a flat screen. We've all seen it on movies and stuff like that. But it's an interesting way to get your attention for your personal brand or even a home video, maybe a proposal to your loved one. You can spend $40 and you'll get 15 seconds of fame on one of Times Square's largest billboards. That's from Fast Company.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. Like I thought we have $40 to spare. Maybe we could put the Look Mum pod on there. Maybe get some 15 seconds of advertisement.
Yep. A lot of people are just doing their TikToks and stuff on this. So that's interesting. Especially is considering they're not allowing brands to do it, but we'll get into that. It's purely for just personal use. And then lastly, for all you hustlers that listened last week or listen every week, we're always looking for new ways to make income. And especially in these dark times of recession looming and increased inflation and stuff, we all need a little bit of extra pocket money or just not even pocket money, just living money.
Yeah, just to pay the bills.
To get by. So we're going to touch on a new article by Business Insider, easy ways to make passive income online as a business owner.
That's
Obviously, you don't have to be a business owner, but just anyone in general. A couple of ways to make a bit of, they say passive income, but nothing's passive.
No, everything's aggressive. No, joking. No, but it's one of those things that you see all these articles about, hey, anybody can do it, but it's really interesting to see from like an actual already business owner type thing, just that little extra money you can get on top. So it'd be interesting to go through what the list is. Different
type of digital products and stuff to capitalize on and let it keep paying the bills long after the thing was created. That's the kind of premise. So we'll get into that. But first off, millennials living at home. When's the last time you lived at home? Like what age would you leave your parents' place? Because you've been living for a while on your own in the Sydney city, right?
I have, yeah. So, but actually moved back home and had a little bit of a hiatus back home.
Did
you? I did, yeah. So as soon as I finished high school when I was 18, pretty much the next, like the January or February, I moved out into the city because I worked in the city. I just wanted to be closer to make it easier. And there was just a spot open in someone that I worked with. They had, we've got a room free if you wanted to move out. So I did. That was like the worst place because like my cereal got stolen. The dude upstairs had a really loud alarm clock but would never wake up to like turn it off. So that was
how many people were living in there?
It was like a 6. It was like a massive.
That's a nightmare.
Yeah. It was like a massive like townhouse and there was like 6 people there. Sometimes the partners, so it'd be like 7 to 8 people. So it was just huge. And then I think I was only there for about a year and then I moved into a nicer, smaller place in the city. It was only like 3 people. So that was heaps easy. So I was there for quite a while.
And then when did you move back home
I moved,
after that?
No. Then I moved into the inner west and just lived with one other person. So I sort of was downgrading. So the less people that you live with are always better. I didn't really enjoy living with heaps and heaps of people because you have to deal with them not doing their dishes or not maintaining the place. But if you just have one other person, it's just one other person you have to hold accountable. So I think it was probably about 4 or 5 years I was living at a home and then I moved back home for 2 to 3 years and then I moved back out.
Why did you move back home?
My housemate was moving in with her partner and I didn't really know who else to move in with at the time. So I just moved back home temporarily.
Right.
Yeah. And my mum loves me. So she loved having me there.
Interesting. So I just want to know what cereal was being stolen, to be honest.
Cheerios. I was a big Cheerios fan. Right. I'm surprised I actually remembered that.
Matches your mentality to a T.
Cheerios. What about you? When did you move out of home?
When I started uni, I was mature age, I think 22, and moved in with a couple of stoner roommates. That was kind of interesting for a couple of years. But I haven't moved back home since. I rarely even go home to visit the parents, to be honest. Mm-hmm. But this article here is so that's a short answer compared to
my long-winded one.
Your history of 5. I've only lived in like 2 or 3 places. So,
but when I did move back home in that middle part there, just the amount of income that I had available, because I only had to pay $50 board. My mum was super lovely. She's like, just pay $50, help with like food and all that kind of thing. And then it was just when I was living out of home, it was paycheck to paycheck, but I'd go home like on Sundays and just grab a whole bunch of like, pastas or just whatever frozen meals are there. And then, when I lived at home, I just had so much income that I was just like saving, buying.
Where's the money gone?
I think I spent it on food, to be honest.
So you're not spending it on food anyway, just higher end foods. So we'll get into this article by Business Insider. Millennials are living with their parents at higher rates than past generations, and they're not ashamed. They love it, apparently. There's a bit of a gender inequality here for this article. There's no males, but we're not going to touch on that for too long. Do you reckon more females or males move back home with their parents? Without being like trying to like give the perfect answer for the internet. 100% females, right? I'll think males because like both my brothers ended up moving back home as well. Interesting. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, super interesting. But yeah, it depends on the family and the person, obviously. It does, yeah. I feel like males will probably try and suck it up a bit more and try and show their independence, whereas females are, I guess, more caring and probably want to go home and spend more time with their parents. Perhaps that's a massive generalization. Yeah, I could sort of see that working, whereas like it's the whole. Yeah, very generalized. I could see where dudes would just try to tough it out for that little bit longer and be like, I can look after myself. I don't need mum to do my laundry. All it is my beers and my steak and pay the bills and I'm good. Yeah. So since the onset of the pandemic, young millennials are living with their parents at rates not seen since 1972. So what happened in 1972? I don't know. It doesn't touch on that. That's a different rabbit hole to go down to on a different day. According to the US Census Bureau, about 18% of men and 12% of women. Oh, there you go. You were right. Oh. It's a higher percentage of men aged between 25 and 34 were living with their parents in 2022. So there you go. I was wrong. Well, once again. Well, another generalization. Dudes love to be, their laundry done, their food done. Home cooked meals and stuff. Yeah, exactly. Living at home means saving money for a down payment for their own place, waiting out high mortgage rates and sky-high housing prices. And it also means prioritizing spending on experiences like vacations and concerts rather than material goods. I kind of wish that I had this mindset when I moved back home. So I could have saved for a house deposit like, 10, 15 years ago if I had that sort of thought. But I was like, no, I'm just going to spend my money willy-nilly. It's crazy. Yeah. And that all comes down to just education. And at the end of the day, like the schooling system's not going to really teach you that much about saving for a house deposit, budgeting for food and utilities. Not at all. So a lot of that stuff does fall on the parent. When you're 18, 19, 20, it's the last thing you're worrying about. Is money, yeah. But you need to be force-fed that kind of info a bit more, in my opinion, compared to what I was taught and passed down. I wish I was that savvy at that time, but it's only really kicking in now in the 30s, so it's a little bit too late. Americans well into their 30s aren't afraid of being labelled immature or unsuccessful for living at home.
So I guess the stigma isn't as there as it used to be. Because remember when you were younger or, with your friends and they were like 22, 23, like, oh, you're still living at home. Why?
I think now it's less of a stigma because everyone knows how
expensive
and how tough times really are now. There's no like, oh, I'm just doing it because it's good for me. Like everyone knows it's universally like incredibly hard to get a house deposit to pay off a mortgage and stuff like that. So that's why it's gone. It's just a universal, it's ubiquitous knowledge. So it breaks down a couple of females that have moved home with their parents. I'm not going to get into the article too much because it's kind of generic info, but we'll go through a couple of the reasons why. So they're going to be obvious, but I guess it's our job to point out the obvious because that's what we're pretty good at.
That's what we do, yeah.
So one reason is financial goals and cultural traditions keep bar week here at home. So financial goals, obviously, if you want, as I said before, if you want to save for a house deposit, you want to hold out while the mortgage prices of the rates are so high, hold out for a year or 2 years until they hopefully come back down to normal levels as they were prior to COVID. So one reason is financial goals, cultural traditions. Obviously, some people based on their where their parents have come from or their history, their heritage, they're more of a family unit. They have 2 or 3 generations under one house.
Well, like in the 50s and 60s and stuff, like tradition was the women or females wouldn't move out until they were getting married. So they'd stay at home until they had a suitor and that suitor would buy a house and when they get married, they'll move in together. Interesting. Yeah.
And I guess in places like Australia, in the US, that's, it's not really a common thing for traditions, for Caucasians anyway, I should say.
Well, the advice that I got was like, make sure you live with your partner for a while before you get married so you know what they're really like.
Yeah, I mean, that's good advice as well. But I can see how living at home, if you're from that culture where, you sit down at every meal, you talk a lot more to your parents and stuff, I can see why that'd be tempting, especially after living on your own for a little bit and then things falling apart during COVID. You probably want a bit of security from the people that know and love you the most. That makes total sense.
Be surrounded by that support and everything.
So finances and cultural traditions. The pandemic brought people home, but savings made this lady Megan stay. So just circumstances in the economy and business, people laid off, can't afford rent. I think this lady, man, was paying $2,000 a month in Manhattan. So obviously New York City, probably one of the most notoriously expensive cities to reside in.
Oh, without a doubt, yeah.
So anytime you can get out of there and, I don't know, move 30 minutes, 40 minutes out into the suburbs, save some money with the intention of going back and buying a property in New York City, it's a good place to start, unless you're making a super high income and then you can like save and rent in the city at the same time.
Yeah, but that's a very rare circumstance most of the time.
Very rare. This lady, Chloe, how do you pronounce Chloe with a double dot on the E?
This is Rachel.
No, that's the photographer.
Oh.
How do you pronounce Chloe with a double E? Chloe?
No, it's just Chloe.
Oh.
I think.
Fancy. Chloe focuses on her health and starting her business. So if you have a little side hustle going, you want to reinvest all your extra income that you're not using for day-to-day living, you can put it into your business.
Well, that's some of the Silicon Valley greats, right? They were starting their business from their parents' garage.
Yep, that's a good point. So she's spending time at home or living at home now to save money for her business and her health. Because, I mean, I haven't lived by myself. That would be kind of stressful, trying to pick up all the pieces, trying to keep a house in order, trying to pay the rent and everything on your own, cooking meals, doing dishes and everything, being able to share the workload. That would be pretty stressful.
It can be stressful. I better be a little bit on the lonely side as well, unless if like that's what you like or that's what you prefer. But yeah, I've always preferred to at least have someone else there. That way you have someone to talk to, someone to like hang out with as well.
Yeah. So the most I've lived with is ex-girlfriends and then just the two guys. So about 5 people, that would be stressful to me.
Yeah.
And like I went for a uni, there's a lot of friends that I made in uni were living in similar situations and it just seemed chaotic. I couldn't deal with that.
Yeah, you'd have to wait for the washing machine. You'd have to like you know, if they used your dishes, you'd have to like clean them up or they'd leave them dirty in the sink. Like you're just relying on like too many variables and it was very stressful.
Yeah. The odds of everyone being on the same page and being just as accountable, super low. Yeah. Super low. That brings us into this next article, also by Business Insider, probably one of our favorite websites. They're usually pretty short. They're not too informative or too statistical or anything.
They got a nice little tidbit insider information.
They rely on a lot of other news outlets to get their info. So meet the Zillennials.
The Zillennials. This is the first time I've heard of it, but once reading the breakdown, I was like, oh, it kind of makes sense what they call them.
Yep. So Zillennials who grew up online, live with their parents, and have retailers chasing their disposable income.
Yeah.
So we just touched on millennials and why. I mean, we're millennials. I think it's
like 28 to like 42 or something.
I think it's like pretty much all the 80s. If you're born in the 1980s, you're pretty sure you're millennial.
Yeah, and
thereabouts.
The Zillennials are like on the cusp of Gen Z and the millennials. So they're like in the 90s to the 2000s.
I think 1990 to about early 2000 is a Zillennial. So yeah, like they don't fit into either because the way I was reading is they're old enough where there wasn't internet initially when they were growing up. They sort of grew up, they were children or toddlers when September 11 happened.
Gotcha.
It's a simple way of thinking about it.
Well, we're like older Zillennials if you think about it because, I didn't get the internet until I was like, 8 or 9?
We should create our own little one between millennial and Zillennial because I remember like getting internet in like year 5 or 6 and we used to play like Berenstain Bears on the Mac computers at school. And then was like, oh, internet's here. This is crazy. So I think we grew up in the best time, to be honest.
Yeah, because we know the best of, not the best of both worlds, but we've lived without the internet and with the internet. So we know sort of the two versions. But not only have we lived with the internet, we've lived with dial-up and other internet too.
And we grew up with like the initial Game Boy. So one definition is that they didn't have the initial Game Boy. They had like the second or third generation.
Every generation designed on gaming consoles.
Yeah. Zillennials who grew up a little bit later. They grew up online, live with their parents, have more disposable income now. So a powerful micro generation is on the rise. The retailers are starting to fight for its disposable income. Called Zillennials or Zennials, which one do you prefer, first or the second?
Zennials. Probably like Zillennials, just because it's closer to millennials. It's easier.
Yeah. This cohort of roughly 30 million consumers includes anyone born between 1990 and 2000. Payments website estimates that about a third of Zillennials, or around 11 million people, are still living with family members. Recent data showed that around 48% of Americans between the ages of 18 and 29 are living with their parents. So almost half of that generation are living with their parents, which is
quite a bit.
That's a lot.
Yeah, it's huge. And that's just shows you, I guess, not how much the world has changed, but just like the, traditions and like expectations and stuff. Like, as soon as you left high school, you're expected to either go to uni or go to college or get a job straight away. But now people are kind of like taking those gap years or trying to figure themselves out. And there's just not as much pressure to like, I guess, go gun-ho as soon as you leave school.
It's interesting. When you think about it, where does that pressure come from?
Usually comes from the parents, right?
I think it's more society. Parents aren't like, go and get a house. They're just like, yeah, do whatever.
Yeah. But I guess like to say because like as the parents, the younger or whatever generation those parents fall into, they're just going off what their parents did. So if they were super like pressure to get something or get a job, when you have kids, you're not going to be as like, have as much pressure on them, right? And be like, follow your dreams. I mean, that's what we got taught. Follow your dreams. Yeah. Follow your passions.
You do anything you want.
Yeah.
It's not true.
No.
The Zillennials aren't paying for rent or a mortgage. They grew up on the internet and they're savvy shoppers with plenty of disposable cash. So they understand finance to a degree, but they don't have to spend a bulk of their income on rent or mortgages. And they also know how to shop online. They're very savvy with how they use and consume the internet and stuff like that. But they're actually helping to fuel the luxury boom because they're saving on bills and necessities like groceries.
Right.
So they're the ones that are buying crypto or sports cards or
like art,
like we talked about in the previous episode at Christie's. But just handbags, sneakers is a big one.
Yeah,
all that sort of thing.
Gotcha. Like it's And like, what else would you do with your disposable income, right? Like if you if you can't travel, this is like pre-COVID or whatever. Like if you can't travel or do anything like that, you're going to spend it on things that you can wear and things that you can show off instead.
Yeah.
Because you don't have your own home, so you can't buy nice furniture, probably not so much art because you can't hang it on your parents' wall if you can't, because it's your parents' house. So you just buy things that you can physically show off.
And then obviously, again, this is like, we're just making massive generalizations this week. And then there's some that are probably saving every last penny and going to, have 4 or 5 properties by the time they're in their 30s. There's that whole aspect too. I guess like gaming and social media and stuff is a lot of how people spend their money these days, men mostly. But in terms of luxury shoppers, I think it's just like handbags and sneakers and just designer clothes, fashion
in general
for the most part. Millennials and Gen Z are expected to make up 70% of luxury shoppers worldwide by 2025. In 2019, they made up just 44%. So it's going to go from 44, based on these projections. 44% of people at our sort of age range to 70% are going to be shopping for those luxury things.
Far out.
So I guess Gen Xers and boomers and stuff are going to, be paying down their mortgage, paying for grandkids and stuff eventually. And have less need to showboat and show off with the things they buy.
Yeah, that is very true because like the whole like consumerism thing, I think you get more knowledgeable with age. So, when you're young, you want all those cool things.
I guess the second they leave home, you're going to get a nasty shock about, electricity is X amount a month. Water, gas, all this stuff is extra money that I haven't really considered mum and dad were handling. And I'm out here buying Air Force Ones and Gucci bags, not Gucci bags, but like what's a popular brand? Louis Vuitton we'll get into.
Yeah. But like, are they actually being prepared to like go into the real world and having to pay for everyday living, or are they just, living like as it is and not having to care about it? They're just going to get a huge shock and not be able to survive.
It comes down to the parents, education and parenting. What I just had a little brain idea because that's where they come from, right?
The brain. A little brain idea.
If you were a parent and you were like trying to expose your child, even as young as 14, 15, 16, and they have like a little side job, they're making $50 a week at some little grocery store or something. Getting them to pay the bills would be a way of just breaking them into the real world. Like you could treat them as like the money manager of the house. Not like obviously you have control over everything, like you would with a device or an app, like you can control what gets done.
Yeah.
But you could be like, this is what electricity bills are. This is how we pay for them. We're going to give you the money, like you're basically a tenant with us, but you can handle the transaction. Obviously, you oversee everything.
Yeah. But
then they're aware, it's that time of month again. I got to pay the bill. Hey, mum and dad, like, have you paid that bill? Like, just little things like that would make a difference, as opposed to be like just doing it all for them and just hand holding them the whole time.
Yeah, because you can't learn anything if someone does it all for you. And like that totally makes sense, because I remember when I moved out of home, I had no idea like how to pay a bill or like go into the real estate and pay rent. Like what was it? What was the norm? What were you meant to do? Because your parents, would literally just pay everything for you or would just handle it. You'd have it, you'd give them money and they'll go and do it for you.
Even just as simple as like, here's the calendar. This is the day where we pay our bills. Are we going to pay our bills tonight? Or I don't know. These are just discussions for parents to have. But
and it just helps show the value or what things are worth as well. So rather than just like going out and be like, I want this and this and this. I'm like, no, this is $300. You'd be like, I know the value of $300.
Speaking of value, what is the value in a collab with Louis Vuitton? So Louis Vuitton and Yayoi Kusama is peak luxury collab. Is that a good thing or is it not? So, that's a fancy LV bag there.
Yeah.
So I'm unfamiliar with the artist. You've done a bit of research on this, and it ties into the luxury brand thing that we're just talking about, right?
It does, yes. So unintentionally, which is kind of cool.
Yep.
So she's been around for ages. I think I have like a Google link on my page potentially of just like some of the stuff that what it looks like. I don't think I've got it. Oh, yeah, the Google
some of her
link.
Artwork.
Yeah, just some of the artwork.
What kind of art does she do? Painting?
So she's got these big motifs around about polka dots and dots, and like she's heaps famous for that big pumpkin that you see there.
So she's just a pure dot artist.
Yeah, so it's very repetitive, and she's known for making these big like experience rooms, or they're called infinity rooms. So you go in and it just looks massive. Like it looks pretty crazy.
It's almost I mean, it's just dots, but
yeah. But like that's her
style. Of the Aboriginal art, but there's obviously way more lines and animals created from the actual dots and stuff themselves. So it's just dots. Like I can see how it's kind of unique, but it's also like anyone could do this.
Yes, I think, it's just the motif that she always goes for. Like that's her style.
Gotcha.
And like some artists will have just a particular style and that's sort of like what they stick with. Yeah, so it's super interesting if you wanted to go back to the other article.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So one thing that's really interesting about this, they've done a collab before, and that was a lot more limited edition and it did really well. And usually with these collabs that designers do, whether it's, Gucci or Nike or, like Louis Vuitton, they'll have like a limited run of items. That's how they become heaps popular. So all these designers will come in and maybe do a particular bag or, redo some sneakers or things like that. And then the resale value or the collector value goes up. But this time around, they're actually doing over 450 individual items. So then that's question, is it going to be oversaturated?
Like SKUs or...
Yeah. Like
okay, so it's not just
items.
like one SKU where they have 400 of that one SKU. It's 400 different lines being created.
100%. Yeah. So then it comes to that question is it too oversaturated to be designer or to be collective?
Right. And we'll go into... I mean, this is what's interesting for Louis Vuitton. They're like, this is easy money because what's one of the most famous patterns you see on a dress or something?
Yeah.
Polka dots.
100%. Yeah. So it could be a very, very successful thing. There's quite a few little Instagram photos and stuff from the page itself. Hi Snobbity, I think it is, which is a really cool... Snobbity, which is a good name. But yeah, so they've got sneakers as well. But yeah, just one really interesting thing that they're doing this time around is they are bombarding the public with the advertising and the marketing for this particular brand. So they've got large like animatronics of the artist. They've got like robot versions and stuff doing pretend painting, like in the actual Louis Vuitton stores. Yes, they've actually redesigned so many of the actual stores and as if it's taken over and it's like multiplied, making these really big viral moments.
That's kind of cool, like a cell replicating.
Yeah, exactly. So there's just like dots and dots and dots everywhere. And it's a bit of a hit and miss with the public or the Louis Vuitton fans because one, is it, collective enough or is it just too much?
Gotcha.
Yeah, and that's why the whole idea of like, is it a good idea? Are they going too overboard with this?
And it's also like you're going to get sick of dots after a while.
100%.
It's not like you're like, oh, this is a dot, and then this one's just like crazy neon colors. Like everything is just dots, just in a different layout.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's
I like it, but I just want to be the pessimist, the devil's advocate here.
No, of course. And one thing that Louis Vuitton is, I'm not sure if we're going to get to it.
You just tell me to scroll when you need me to scroll.
Yeah, so it's all good. So because they think it's going to be so successful, they've actually figured it into their fiscal report for the first quarter of 2023. Not many businesses would actually do that.
So they would usually base their projections just on their standard lines.
Exactly.
As opposed to the collabs boosting
100%.
like it being a bonus, essentially.
Exactly, yeah. You just base it on your standard lines. But this one here, they're relying so much on this collab to help boost their sales that they've actually popped it into reports. If you wanted to scroll through some of the Instagram ones, they'll come up with some of the photos for those that are watching. Thank you.
So it's the classic Louis Vuitton bag that everyone's seen with just coloured polka dots all over it.
Yeah, or like paint dots and stuff. So they've like invented like a new sort of like print so it looks like it's wet paint, but it's, actually dried paint. And then heaps of models and heaps of celebrities, like including Tom Brady. They're all like promoting this particular collab. And yeah, like I said, it raises that question, like, is it going to be as successful as the previous one because there's so much, or are they creating these huge viral moments because they have put a lot of emphasis on being able to make it work?
Interesting.
Yeah.
Do you know anyone that owns anything Louis Vuitton that's real? Because you see the bags all the time. But
you do see the bags. Are they real bags or not real bags? Yeah, it's pretty...
Odds are pretty low, I would say.
Yeah, a bit low for those ones. But it's never really been my style. I've never been a big fan of like the brown sort of classic bags.
What's
Maybe
this?
You can play the video.
So they're doing it on the outside of buildings as well.
Yeah, so it's massive.
So it's not just dots, they're like as if they were painted with a bit of splatter on the edges.
Exactly, and they've got these huge animatronics as well.
Is she actually adding them, or it looks like she's just holding the
looks like she's just holding them, yeah.
Interesting. That was kind of cool.
Yeah, and I think if you scroll through, there might be some other viral moments. But again, yeah, so this is just a screen. This is like another Louis Vuitton store.
It's like on Times Square, which we'll get to in a moment.
I think this one is in Tokyo because she's from Japan.
Oh, that's cool. It shows 3D. It's not 3D, but it's just the LCD wraps around the building and it makes it look so three-dimensional. That was dope. Interesting.
Yeah, so super interesting, just the way it looks. So I've never... Sorry, that's a bit loud. Thank you. I've never really seen a brand go this far before with a collab, like this intense. Usually it's just, a little bit of posters or a couple of things here and there, maybe some digital ads, but this one is actually going really, really extreme.
So what's the lesson here we can take if you're running a business or marketing, other than just blasting it out everywhere? Because the main thing, like it says just here, the magnitude of like how much they're promoting it threatens to crush the most powerful element of any luxury team up or collab, exclusivity.
Yes.
So it's purely just like they're what's the word? Like they're just saturating the market too much with an apparently exclusive product.
Mm-hmm. And it just like, they would have like obviously the high end ones that probably have a limited run of that particular collab. But just say if you can't afford a handbag, here's a wallet. Just say if you can't afford the shoes, here's some sandals. Like they're just a little bit for everybody.
Interesting. Let's see if there's anything Louis Vuitton, Yayoi
on eBay.
On eBay.
Let's see what they go for. Okay, couple of hundred.
So let's go. What, new or we'll just click here.
Any condition.
$1,400 for a shoulder bag, infinity dots. $2,500, $3,500, $63 for the paper gift bag.
Wow! So just for the gift bags in general.
Okay, so like between like $1,000 and $4,000 generally for the colored ones. I mean, there are some that are just like plain black and white dots. If you're just listening, thank you so much. Drop a rating and review on your podcast app of choice. You can also watch the show on Spotify and on YouTube. Jump along for the video version. Interesting. So I'm afraid you won't be getting one anytime soon.
No, like I'm not fussed. I'm not a big fan of like the Louis Vuitton. There's some controversy around her as well. She's had a few like mental health issues and maybe a bit racist on the side. So it's interesting that Louis Vuitton.
She's racist?
Potentially, yeah. So there's like,
potentially racist.
Oh no, she like, I don't know whether there's quotes and stuff
She's
as
made
well.
Some,
yeah, exactly.
Horrible, some bad statements in the past.
Exactly.
And she does look like she's probably old, in her 60s, 70s, 80s. She's probably from a different era.
Yeah.
And she's Japanese, did you say?
Yeah, not making excuses or anything,
no,
but yeah,
just
interesting that Louis Vuitton would go with someone who's still controversial that way. So I don't think that
doesn't bother them. It's all about money and brand recognition for them. If she
they say her art still sells regardless.
Well, that's exactly what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. If her art has sold in the past and it continually gets eyeballs and new customers in, and the designs aren't the most insane thing to reproduce, and it's just dots, then I mean for the people that are actually making the products, adding a dot is not the hardest thing. No,
and it's just one of those things. So with a brand or with a designer as big as Louis Vuitton, it's just interesting to see that they still have to rely so heavily on marketing or making these huge moments, so it creates a viral moment for them, for their items to sell. They can't just be based on their name alone now anymore. So very, very interesting, because you have all these other brands that have popped up. You've got, obviously Gucci has been around for a while, but you have all these other kind of, like, I'm terrible with like these brand names, but like there's quite a few others out there like Moncler and, all these other sort of style brands that they have to compete with now. So what's going to set them apart from everybody else?
Yep. So it's the collabs.
Yeah,
they're probably going to do like one a year, right? They're going to be cherry pick what artist they're going to go with, what artist is still relevant, and you need to not forecast, but you have to like kind of look into the future in terms of, is this style still going to be desired? Because it's all about the artist. Like the popularity of the artist is one thing, but like whether the style is in the next 5-10 years is a whole nother factor as well.
Yeah, that was a collab as well that they did with Nike.
Louis Vuitton and Nike Air Force One collaboration caused a similarly headline-dominating team-up, managed that trick by incorporating disparate colorways and fabrications, issuing only a limited number of shoes and hyping up the entire affair with a first look auction. So yeah, it's about supply and demand.
Mm-hmm.
And having 450 lines or 430 different lines, it's like it's just too much. Even like if they're all different handbags or purses, it's just like
it's just too much. Yeah,
that's the thing with any business. Like you don't want to give so many options because it becomes just too overwhelming, right? Like
100%.
Customer doesn't know what to go with. I remember, this is just a small anecdote. I got a Nintendo DS a while ago, like years ago, and instead of like buying games individually, you get a little hack device cartridge, and you could just download games off like torrent websites. And I went ahead and downloaded probably 4,000 games.
Oh.
What's it called? The dog game. Just like the basic dog game for DS.
Dog game. Is it Nintendogs?
Nintendogs, yeah.
Yeah, it was Nintendogs.
And just like all these random games thinking, yeah, I'm going to get everything so I can play all of them. The second I turned it on, I'm just like, I don't know what to do.
Too many choices, too overwhelmed.
Pick one, this is boring. Another one. Pick one. And you just end up essentially settling on nothing. This is my reference because that's the only reference I have.
No, that's fair.
But you give too many options, you don't know what to do. So even like Nike Air Force Ones here, right? Like there's so many different ones
that you can get now.
That you
100%.
can get.
Yeah.
So you really have to love the color or love the artist or love the theme around its colorway or why it was designed that way.
And I think when it comes to their Air Force One brands, something that they're doing right is they do have those limited edition runs. So they're only releasing a certain amount of that particular colorway or a certain amount of that collab that creates that exclusivity. So then people want it and it creates that demand. So if you can't afford that one with only limited runs, then you're going to get something else that's similar.
Interesting. So yeah, anything else about that, or that was pretty much?
That was pretty much it. So I don't think I really highlighted much other like key points, takeaways. That's a controversy that she had.
This animatronic is crazy.
Yeah, it's huge. Like just
How
on the building.
big is that, man?
It's massive. Like it's on the huge building. So that's what I mean. Like it's almost a bit overboard.
Is there a Louis Vuitton in Sydney? Louis.
There is.
Vuitton.
Sydney. It's in the Pitt Street Mall, I think, from memory.
I don't think they would have done one here, would they?
Oh, looks like it, maybe.
Louis Vuitton's window display in collaboration with the Yayoi.
Yayoi.
They're like little tentacles.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit more different than, they've still got dots all over them. Interesting. All right, well, let's get on to the next one then. Speaking of marketing and displaying brands and insane imagery to the public. Times Square. Yeah,
we've never been to Times Square. It'd be interesting to see it in real time, though. Times Square. Yeah. No, but it's just to have that whole atmosphere, like being in there. I don't know if I still have some stats, but it's something ridiculous, like 35,000 people, like
pass every day.
Yeah, it's crazy how much like eyeballs you would actually get in that particular area.
All right, so this is from Fast Company. $40 will buy you 15 seconds of fame on one of Times Square's largest billboards. Pardon me. From its inception in the 1880s, Times Square has always been one giant pool of ad-filled billboards for companies that love to advertise, but it's surrounded by mostly soulless buildings. So it's only a very small strip that has the insane LCDs and imagery going on, and I imagine a bunch of the side streets are just like got nothing going on, right?
They say soulless buildings? Soulless. I'm just assuming just standard corporate buildings.
Yeah, so it'd be like one strip with all the imagery or the lights, and then the other blocks behind it are probably not much going on, right? Wrapped around the corner of TSX Broadway, the 46-story, $2.5 billion tower that wants to revolutionize retail and entertainment in Times Square has an LCD screen that will not be showing ads. It will be showing your own personal videos.
Very interesting, considering like where brands and marketing, they're sort of more getting in contact with people and personal brands rather than having like a big company like advertise stuff for you.
Yeah.
Should be. It's kind of bizarre. Like it's very sort of futuristic, like having your face up in Times Square.
I think it's only going to be temporary because if there's 36,000 people walking past a day, it's brand name, brand recognition. You want to slap your brand. You want to slap Coca-Cola logo on people's face. You want to slap stuff in people's face, right? And especially if it's on repeat and it's like a moving dynamic image. Like we've all seen like a standard poster on like a bus stop or something, and it doesn't really catch your attention. When it's moving and there's visual elements, we just looked at that Louis Vuitton one, and there was like 3D elements to it. That catches your attention, makes you want to stop and like watch the ad as opposed to just walking by. So that's what's interesting about Times Square is that, there's brands everywhere. You can probably walk past 100 logos in 1 minute if you really looked and paid attention and were there. But the Pixel Star program officially launched on New Year's Eve when people from more than 6 cities and 111 countries booked a slot to stream their own 15-second videos on one of Times Square's largest screens. So it's a 25-foot LED screen, and you can basically pay $40 to have your video played. So here's a little image of some TikToker showing some Magic 8 Ball or some little.
I think it's like a not a magician thing, where they have the same as the fire dances
juggling
and stuff. Yeah, the
magic.
The magic balls where they just they roll them all over themselves and like. Woo.
So she's paid $40 to show her 15-second video about her magic balls. Where are we? Oh, it hasn't highlighted the rest of the article.
That's fine.
Basically you can download the TSX app, schedule your video, and pay $40 for your 15 seconds of fame. For comparison, traditional advertising on one of Times Square's big screens starts at $50 for 20 plays.
$500.
Or $500 for 20 plays. Or as of recently, $150 for a photo to run 15 seconds per hour.
That doesn't seem as bad. I thought it'd be a bit more expensive for that.
$500 is pretty cheap.
Yeah.
So if you're like a big brand, you're just going to throw up thousands of dollars.
Yeah, 100%.
It's like nothing to you. Your operating expenses is like this is nothing compared to your revenue. You just throw all the money at it. As you said, 360,000 people a day.
Way off.
So yeah, that's a third of a million people can view the screens at any one day. You can't show any nudity, violence, or offensive behavior, and you can't run ads, traditional advertising for your company or brand. It's purely like a world. They want to consider it the world's largest social feed.
Ah, I see.
So our team is still ironing out its definition of traditional advertising. An artist who puts up together a creative 15-second video asking people to follow them on Instagram would likely get the green light. But a brand putting up a floating QR code or a Coca-Cola executive uploading a video of someone drinking a Coke would not.
Gotcha.
So it's purely just they just want to make it the world's largest IG stories or TikTok.
Wow. Yeah.
So pretty interesting. You want to have your handle or something on there so you actually get some follow through.
100%. I wonder if anyone's actually tried it and had like success and be like, oh yeah, I got some followers from it. Or is that 15 seconds too quick and you might only get maybe 1 or 2 people?
You wouldn't get that many people, I don't think.
No.
Because they say 360,000, that's in one day. You got 15 seconds. At any given moment, everyone's going to be on their phones to begin with, or eating a New York City hot dog or pretzel or whatever the hell they got served up, or the naked cowboy guy playing his guitar.
Yeah.
There's too many distractions.
Oh, for sure.
It has to be like a banging video.
Yeah.
To like get more than 10 to 20 people like click through to your content.
Well, one thing that I was reading was they want to have like with the compatible app that you can put headphones in and you'll be able to hear the audio and stuff comes through. But how many people are going to just be like,
one's doing that.
Oh, I'm going to put in switch over so I can hear it.
I'm going to have the New York Times Square today and just put in the headphones and see what comes up. No, it's not going to happen. It's an interesting idea, and I like that it's used as an alternative to ads.
Yeah.
But it's not something you'd want to pay for unless you know for sure it was going to pay off. Perhaps you could do some sort of publicity stunt and get people to film themselves while it's on and give some sort of giveaway or some promotion or something. But I don't think it's cool, but it's not. There's no ROI. The payoff isn't going to be that great. No.
It'd just be purely like, just say if you're able to be there at the same time, you can film
story.
It. Yeah, exactly. I think there was like one dude when I was reading into this was, I just put up a 15-second thing of me just eating bread. And I was like, what? Super random.
Random.
It's that whole 15 seconds of fame. Like it's the...
You have to pay for it now though.
You do.
You have to earn it back in the day.
It was like Andy Warhol was like the... pioneered that 15 seconds of fame type thing. People just want to be able to say, hey, I was in New York Times Square on a billboard. That's pretty cool.
If every slot gets booked out for 12 hours straight, it could generate $115K a day.
Oh, wow.
So
that's a hustle.
are we going to say hot or not for this one?
I'd say like for $40, hot just for the experience, but
you'd want to be able to.
But for a marketing moment, probably not.
You need to be there to capture it.
Yeah, you would
as well. So I don't know if it'd give you the actual time slot or not. I imagine that'd be a bit clunky to work out. You're going to be played at 7:45 and 36 seconds.
3 a.m.
Well, it has to break down to the seconds. If it's only 15 seconds, you can't. You need to be there at a very precise time.
And imagine you go on caught in traffic and you miss it, then it's gone. $40 down the drain.
Well, what won't go down the drain is money, especially if you're making passive income ideas as a business owner.
That's true.
I'm getting mildly better at the segues.
I think so.
So if you guys listening, we have a little side hustle or a main. I was going to cut the ad off. Let me try and do a workaround here.
Let me just switch over while you do this so we don't give away any personal information.
Basically, this show's about hustling and side hustles and entrepreneurship and trying to defeat the rat race or get out of it at least. And there's a few ways to do that. We make a little bit of money on eBay.
We do.
But we're always looking for new ideas, new ways to create revenue sources, income streams. And we're going to touch on a couple here that are pretty common knowledge, but good to consider if you have a passion or an interest or an expertise in a certain area.
Or even just in spare time.
Spare time, that would help. So
good to switch over.
This is from Business Insider. Maybe we just don't do any topics, any articles from Business Insider next week. Maybe just we give them a break for a little bit.
Sorry, we're like unofficial. Hey, Business Insider, sponsor us.
Or we're going over our limit of 5 articles very fast at this rate.
Maybe don't. Maybe, or you can give us a free subscription, please.
I'm sure they've got bigger fish to fry.
Yes.
So this article is called "The Easiest Ways to Make." This is probably not the easiest, but the easiest ways to make passive income online as a business owner from digital courses or downloads or 2 downloads. So we're just going to touch on them real quick, run through them, our thoughts. I think they're all going to be around for many years to come. It's good to know what options you have available. And, if you feel like you can give some value to the world based on what you're into or what you do on a day-to-day basis, then some of these ideas might be helpful.
You never know.
So passive income can help business owners earn extra money, as we just alluded to. In the Wall Street Journal's latest quarterly survey, academic and business economists said that there's a 61% probability of recession. So
it's a pretty high percentage.
Good odds, right?
Yeah, it is.
Here are 5 ways. So obviously, speculation, US will enter a recession means entrepreneurs are interested in side hustles or passive income streams to pad their savings. Here are 5 ways business owners can earn, not just business owners, anyone really, can earn passive income online. So number 1, courses and workshops. So you can create, I'm missing on my highlights here, so I'm just going to have to wing it, but we'll just go off the topics, right? So courses and workshops. The benefit of one of these is, yes, it can take a lot of time and money up front to produce the video content or whatever sort of format you're going to deliver the course or workshop in. But the benefit is long-term residual income if it's popular enough and you can market it and promote it enough for people are interested in the product or service that you provide. Courses and workshops are a really good way to have that ongoing revenue. So if you make a course on, say, photography or digital photography, you have a 8 video course in little 1 hour brackets or little 1 hour segments and just charge $200-$300 for it. It's going to be online for as long as you can support the website hosting, basically. So you can just potentially make money for like 10-20 years after the fact of making it that one time. So it's sort of like the compounding effect of like a small amount of work up front, but a greater reward long term if you can pull it off.
Oh yeah, for sure. And that's where it comes down to whether it's going to be a successful course or not, because you can slap something together, but whether it's going to actually be helpful to other people, whether people are actually going to be interested in it, whether you do the work to advertise it, whether you do the work to cultivate reviews or testimonials, like that's the key of it to being sustainable or successful long term. But yeah, if it's something that you sort of just like half put effort into and just slapped together hoping and be like, man, this is my money maker, gonna be great, it's not gonna work. So it's one of those things where it can be so beneficial, because we've used courses and workshops and stuff before, that it can be so beneficial as long as, you know, you put the effort and you know it's something that someone's going to be after.
And the benefit of the internet these days is there's platforms that provide the shortcut to the customers.
Mm-hmm.
So you could have your own website with your course on there and your own transaction system, and, you know, create a personal brand online on social media to like garner traffic to your website.
Yeah.
But things like Skillshare, Udemy, there's a bunch of like websites that host hundreds and hundreds of courses that you could upload the content to and run it through there and save the time and the burden of trying to get traffic to your content to begin with.
Yes.
So obviously it starts off with being either a hobbyist or having a passion or an expertise in an area to then create a course. But the benefit is, like this article is sort of referencing, is the passive income aspect, being able to make money long term rather than an hour work now for an hour's work of pay, and then it starts and stops there. This is like long-term, I guess, passive income in a sense.
Yeah, but it's like a one and done type thing. It's not really something you have to follow up on a regular basis. You don't have to create something new every time.
Yeah.
It's like a one and done type thing.
But you can expand upon it.
You can add to it.
You can add to it if you have a new, like this says, brand strategy 101 workshop. You could, in 3 to 4 years, once you've upskilled yourself even more, you can add like a sequel or a follow-up course that's more high level for people that have taken the course or given you testimonials or enjoyed the first round of the workshop. Now can, you know, jump on and upskill even further. So there's the potential to expand upon it. But it's been around for a while. Everyone knows that courses and workshops are a thing. But I guess the main thing is probably having it on some sort of platform like Skillshare would be the most beneficial way of having it succeed to some degree.
Yeah, like to say if you're, you know, you run a lawn care company or something and you run a course on how to look after your own lawn, it's like, yeah, it's advertisement for your company as well.
Yeah. And you can drive traffic there if you, again, it's all like personal branding and stuff. You can't just like slap it up on there and expect people to come and pay for it if you're not like a notable figure with social proof showing that you know what you're talking about. So
yeah.
That's point number 1. Point number 2, customizable templates. So we all know web design is hard. We use Notion a fair bit.
We do, yeah.
So like applications where the design element isn't necessarily intuitive or easy, you can create templates that make it easier to like jumpstart the process, so someone can just download a template where, you know, headings and colors and everything are sort of already sectioned out and presented in a clear and concise way for you, and you can just customize the wording or what photos are in the template for like the website, for example.
Yeah, so just say if you're a great budgeter, you could make a really good budgeting template, or just say you have a good weekly planner or even like a habit tracker or something like that, then you can create like a template for other people to download and use.
Yeah, so web design is probably the most prominent thing you can think of in terms of finding a template. As I said, Notion's really helpful for this sort of thing.
Yeah.
So if you have a content scheduling plan like we like to try and use, never really use it successfully, but just the way, the layout and the design elements, rather than spending half a day trying to research how do I insert this graph here, or how do I make this image smaller, or how do I wrap around this text around this image. All these things are really useful, and then if you can figure out a way to like make good templates and then sell them, that's where this article sort of ties in, right?
Yeah, so if you have a good eye for design and detail and color and things like that, then this could be a really good side hustle or an extra little income you can do.
If you have a good website already, maybe you haven't even necessarily designed it or had someone design it on your behalf, and you're just getting great feedback, seeing people love it. They love how convenient it is to navigate. All these things should be indications that A, there's a problem that exists in the world. B, I can provide a solution in the form of the template. In this case, can I make a templatized version of what I already own and make it appealable or applicable to people regardless of industry or regardless of what their platform or job is? So web design, things like Notion, there's a bunch of sort of apps like that. They're the ones we're probably most familiar with.
Yep. What's number
Number 3 is printable and digital downloads. So you sort of alluded to that. So design was more, I guess, for like websites and stuff.
Oh, no, I was talking about like digital like trackers and stuff. Yeah, because you can get them.
But you can also make printable and digital ones also.
Yeah.
So like ones for people to use with their hands.
Yes, yeah, but I was talking more of
physical.
Because you have like 2 types of people, right? You've got the people that not live online but love the digital aspects. So they'll have digital notes. They'll have, their calendar and everything is all online. Then you've got the physical people that love to write in a book that would have a physical planner, that would have, the calendar on the fridge, like those where this is the...
Right. So like to clarify that customizable templates is for the user to customize and then printable and digital downloads, same concept, but they're not really customizing it. They're just downloading it and using it at their will. So you can, things like trackers, calendars, planners, budget guides, goal trackers, anything with just like simple lines or like dates you can write in or boxes you can tick or checklists. All these things are really popular and probably the easiest to make out of everything so far, right? Like you can make a simple shopping checklist and make it available for $1.99 on Etsy or something like that.
Yeah, who wouldn't mind? Like it's $2. People are like, oh, it's $2 for a download.
Like my mum, she made that Archie
little beagle.
Bring it down, let the people have a look.
Oh, hold on.
Oh, you don't have to, but
no. It's if you can see it in the corner. She made like a crochet knitted dog for us, but she didn't know how to get the pattern, so Drew actually downloaded a template off Etsy. So someone would have created that, made a template or made it a how-to guide on how to knit it and get everything right, and then just put it up online for someone to buy. How much was it? Do you remember?
Maybe like $2 or $5.
Yeah. And
I think the person had made like $500,000 in revenue. Yeah. Just from templates.
Exactly.
You just make it for every single pet or every type of dog or cat breed. And then, someone wants to make it for their kids or their pet and have a replica crochet version of their loved ones. You can just download it for $2 to $5. And then you repeat that. The sales come through and you repeat that week in, week out. And then you're rolling in money essentially. And again, it's like something you produce that one time and then it's just going to keep paying off.
Exactly.
So yeah, little templates and guides, that sort of thing are really helpful. Again, if you have a specific area of expertise and you see that there's a gap in the market for what people need, if there's a certain business type of planner or checklist or there's KPIs you want to track in your business, for example, if you're in a specific industry, all this sort of stuff can be turned into digital assets is, I guess, the main part of this entire article. Digital assets can produce passive income.
Yeah. So think about what you use on a regular basis. Like, do you use a particular system or a particular product? Do you write, just say it's like, when you're writing down your to-do list for the day, do you always write it in the same format and it's successful? So can you replicate that and then sell it to someone else?
If it works for you, it'll work for
someone else.
A dozen other people.
Especially for $1.
Especially for $1. I mean, $1 is enticing because it's a low buy and low risk. Even like I've bought a bunch of Notion templates for like $3, $4, $5, knowing it's low risk.
Yes.
There is a potential that it doesn't actually suit my needs exactly, but that's a risk you can afford to make, especially if you're a Zillennial living at home and don't spend that much money.
And you have a lot of disposable income.
Next up on this article is Google Ads. So if you have a website for your business, service, blog, or online portfolio, Andrea suggests monetizing the site with Google Ads. For example, Google's advertising program AdSense matches advertisements with your site based on the content and visitors. There's no cost. Entrepreneurs can generate passive income through the ads regularly. So I don't know that much about how that would work on a website necessarily, other than obviously a bunch of keyword stuffing and all that sort of thing. It depends on the industry, it depends on the business.
It does,
but, I mean, Google is the biggest search engine after all. If you can like rank highly or you can run ads through Google in some degree, and you do it right, there's profit to be made there.
More eyeballs equals a better thing. Sometimes. Depends if it's Times Square or not.
Exactly. And lastly, online real estate investment. So while real estate is often suggested as a form of passive income, it can become a huge commitment. Andrea suggests taking part in online real estate investments through companies like Fundrise and Diversity Fund. Don't know either of those two. No. Not endorsing, just reading the article here.
Yes.
These sites work like crowdfunding, where investors can contribute as little as $100 to a property, but can receive a percentage of the investment that when the property earns money. So if you're investing $100, you make the same percentage as a person investing $100,000. So it's basically having a share in property. So not really necessarily about digital products or in terms of your business. It's more what you can do with your profit and your earnings. You put it aside so it produces income, but not necessarily from like a creating something. It's just putting your money in a potentially safe form of investment.
Yeah, I don't know. It just reminds me of like a digital timeshare or something. Like it seems I could sort of see that where that could work, but I bet there'd be a lot of scams with that kind of thing as well.
Yeah, that's why you got to go with a reputable company. I think they're called REITs here in Australia. I'm not too sure. Real estate investment trust.
Right.
The companies that own or finance income-producing real estate.
Gotcha.
Could be wrong, but basically, yeah, you're owning a fractionalization of owning a property.
So it's almost like not like stocks, but it's like you're just digitally investing, but it's actually in physical real estate. You just don't see that physical real estate.
Yeah, well, if you only want to have an investment property, but you can't afford the whatever $50,000 to $100,000 deposit to get into it, but you can invest $20,000, then you just and the property's worth say $200,000, you just own like the percentage.
Gotcha.
And then you get that percentage
rebate or.
Well, you get that whatever percentage you in that property, like you're getting confusing right at the end of the show. Whatever percentage you get back.
Gotcha,
But like if someone puts in 200 and someone puts in 2,000, they get the same back per percentage, just that you own a higher percentage of that property, if that makes sense.
I understand, yeah.
Very simple, but it's not really applicable to sort of the theme of this article that we wanted to go with, which was create digital assets if you can. If there's a problem to be in your sector or realm, or your business, then consider like making something. A lot of them can take very little time. Just a little bit of, learning about how to like create something in Google Docs or Google Sheets or even Canva. Like it's a free application. You can get on there and make some sort of basic template, start selling it for $2. The hurdles are like really low. You don't need that much expertise to create them, right?
Yeah, especially the templates. Obviously with the courses it needs a little bit more effort, but with the templates and with like the printable stuff, it's very low input for just like a good reward.
And we won't have low input next week on episode 48 of Look Mum Podcast. We'll see you then.
Bye.